He didn't plan on being anyone's father. The papers said he couldn't be. The doctor in Denver called it a closed door, and the woman who once promised forever walked right through it. So when Emory Voss, a quiet mountain man with more ghosts than neighbors, handed over $3 silver for three half-starved children no one else wanted, he didn't expect them to call him anything at all, least of all Papa. But that's the thing about love out west. It shows up where no one's watching, and it doesn't ask permission. Some folks said he bought trouble, said no man could raise three orphan girls up a mountain alone, especially not a man with a past full of ashes and a heart that had forgotten how to stretch. But Junie, the oldest, had eyes like truth. May the quiet one sang to the chickens and little Bess. She clung to his shirt like it was the only thing still breathing. They didn't care about law, or blood, or whether the cabin had one bed or three. They only cared that the stove stayed warm, that the nightmares paused when he read from the old Bible, that someone finally listened when they cried. What happens when the law shows up with papers and threats and the kind of cold no fire can melt? What happens when love earned and quiet and undeserved is put on trial? And what kind of man do you become when three little voices who've been passed from hand to hand like firewood look up and say, "You're the only one who never let go"? This isn't just a story about the West. It's about being chosen long after you've given up on being picked. It's about finding family in the most unlikely corners and letting it teach you how to hope again. So come closer, listen gentle, because what happens next will break you and then put you back together. Will you stay to hear the rest? The town of Clifftop didn't notice when he stopped coming down. After all, Emory Voss had always been a quiet man, a mountain man by habit and heart with shoulders like stacked lumber and a voice roughened by more winters than words. Folks said he was simple, but it wasn't true. He just didn't waste things. Not food, not time, not feelings. What they didn't know was that he'd once planted a nursery beside the cabin, measured out with care 3 rose bushes in a line. One for each name they never got to say. Because infertility wasn't a word men used then. It was something whispered in hallways blamed on dust or luck or God. His wife Lenora had cried in the pantry where the light didn't reach. She left the mountain in spring, said she couldn't sleep in a house that echoed like a cradle. That was 5 winters ago. Since then, Emory spoke mostly to the wind. He kept 3 plates on the shelf never used. He patched 3 pairs of mittens never worn. And he built a swing that swayed itself in the wind. One gray October morning, he came to town for nails and lamp oil and walked past a group of children lined like wares outside the old freight depot, hair-matted eyes, dull shoes, not even matching. A man in a sweat-stained vest barked $3 for all 3. They're sisters or cousins. Who knows? Emory paused. Not because he needed children, but because the youngest looked at him with the exact same expression the wind gave when it crept under the cabin door at night. Not desperate, just waiting. He didn't speak, just dropped 3 silver coins into the man's hand like he was buying nails. He led the children to his wagon, didn't ask for names, didn't offer his. The oldest girl, no more than 10, touched his elbow as they climbed up. "Do we call you something?" she whispered. He blinked. And then all 3 said it together, soft as snowfall, like they were trying it out for the first time Papa Emory Voss had faced blizzards. Coyotes, empty cribs. But that one word froze him, like he'd been shot right through the silence he'd wrapped around his life. Back at the cabin, he made 4 plates of stew. 3 of them were filled for the first time, and he watched as 3 small spoons scraped the bottom like they'd never known a meal was meant to last. Sometimes it's not what you're missing that breaks you. It's what you never thought you could have. Sitting across the table calling you by name. Emory Voss had never thought of his cabin as too big. Not until 3 small shadows filled it. They didn't bring much, just a sack with 1 cracked comb, half a Bible, and a pair of mismatched boots meant for feet smaller than theirs. They slept curled like question marks on the bearskin rug by the fire that first night. Didn't ask for pillows, didn't cry. The cabin didn't echo anymore. Morning came with snow, the kind that melts before it matters. The eldest girl, tall and too still for 10, stood at the hearth like she'd always known how to stoke a fire. She didn't wait for Emory to ask. "Her name's Junie," she said, pointing to the youngest. "That one's Bess. And I'm May." Emory nodded, pouring hot water over oats. He didn't ask if those were the names they were born with. He could see in their eyes those were names they chose, not names given to them by men with vests and ledgers. Names carved out of stubborn hope. That day he found a ribbon frozen to the porch rail, bright yellow. He tied it to the axe handle just to see it flutter. By the third day Junie was humming. Bess had arranged pine cones by size, and May asked Emory if the swing was safe. It was the first time someone had asked him about something he made. He answered by fixing the ropes and sanding the seat smooth. That evening, he brought out a tin of jam he'd been saving for Christmas. 3 spoons scraped the jar clean. But kindness doesn't erase the past. Not that easy. That night, Junie flinched at the hoot of an owl. May sat up, breathing hard from a dream she couldn't name. And Bess wet the blanket, then tried to bury it in the woodpile. Emory didn't yell, didn't shame. He just washed the blanket, set it by the fire, and made her a fresh bed in the loft. By week's end, they no longer whispered Papa like a question. They said it like a habit, a promise forming in the quiet. Sometimes family doesn't come from blood. It comes from someone leaving the door open and not asking why you walked in. Emory Voss had lived alone too long to fear silence. But now it wasn't silence he feared, it was the sound of footsteps, ones that might come to take the girls away. Because out here, the law didn't always protect the good, and word traveled fast through timber towns. At Lark's Hollow trading post, he heard whispers Voss took in 3 kids. He don't have a wife, does he? That ain't right. Where's their people? He ignored it mostly, but when a man from the courthouse asked if he had papers, Emory just stared. Paper didn't hold what they had. A quilt Bess helped him mend. A swing May climbed like she trusted it. Junie's muddy handprint drying on the windowsill. One cold evening, Junie stood outside too long. Didn't answer when May called. When Emory found her, she was barefoot staring at the tree line. He used to whistle from there, she whispered. Who? The man who sold us. Her lip trembled. I thought maybe he'd come back. Emory didn't ask why she sounded afraid, not hopeful. He just lifted her into his arms, old knees aching, and carried her back inside. That night, Emory sat by the stove long after they slept. He held a tin of lye soap like it might speak truth. Could he keep them safe? Would someone take them again? He remembered the nursery he'd built for children that never came. The rose bushes had thorns now, but no blooms. And then, the knock came. Not loud, just steady. A woman stood there in travel-worn shoes and a cloak too thin for October. I'm looking for the girls, she said. Are they alive? Some ghosts come wearing law. Others wear grief. And sometimes the hardest storm is one that asks, are you sure they're yours to keep? The woman's name was Alma Greer. She spoke like someone who had run out of places to speak in. And when Emory Voss opened the cabin door wide, he didn't ask for explanations, only said, it's warm inside. She sat near the stove like she might fall apart if the warmth gave out. Junie came down the ladder first, then Bess, then May. They didn't run to Alma. They just looked. Long. Like they remembered a face but not what it used to mean. I was with them once, Alma said softly, when we were all still in Texas. Before the raids. Before we were sold like cattle. Her voice cracked. I tried to find them. But the records. No one writes down the names of girls without fathers. Emory made tea. Poured without a word. He let her speak in her own time. Alma was not their mother, but she had once been their protector. A teenage girl herself tasked with keeping 3 little ones alive during the worst of it. Then one morning she'd woken to find the wagon gone. The man who'd promised her work had taken the girls and left her in the desert with nothing but a water jug and a lie. I've been looking ever since, she said. I didn't even know if they were still... Her voice drifted. Junie touched her hand first. Then Bess laid her head in Alma's lap, and May whispered, we called him Papa now, but we remember you. Later that evening, when Alma offered to leave, Emory looked her square in the eye. You don't have to go. That night, the cabin didn't just feel full, it felt right. 4 bowls at the table, laughter that rose and fell like wind through tall grass, and a fire that burned without fear. The rose bushes outside were brittle, but Emory noticed a green shoot pushing up through the frost. Sometimes healing doesn't come from starting over. It comes from picking up the pieces, right where you lost them. Snow came early that year. Not a soft snow either, the kind that settles like a secret. This snow bit, stung, pressed in through the slats and under doors like it had something to prove. Inside, they stitched quilts and dried apple slices. Junie carved birds from pine. May taught Bess how to read from Alma's half-Bible. Emory just watched and wondered how long peace could last. It was mid-morning when the man arrived, on a black horse with shoes too new for real travel. He wore city gloves and a coat that hadn't seen dirt. He introduced himself with a silver-tipped cane and a name that reeked of courthouse paper, Lyle Thresher. "You purchased 3 minors without formal process," he said. "Technically, that's trafficking." The girls had frozen behind the curtain. Alma stepped forward, lips tight. "They were being sold," she said. "He saved them." But Lyle was unmoved. "Intentions don't weigh as much as ink, miss." He handed Emory a folded document. Court summons, hearing date, possibility of custody removal. That night, Emory sat by the stove again, this time, not with lye soap in his hands, but the paper. "What if they take you from me?" he asked, voice low. Junie climbed into his lap, awkward but certain. "You're not just our papa," she said. "You're the only thing that ever stayed." Alma set down her tea. "If it's a fight they want, we won't send you in alone." And in the silence after her words, Emory realized something. He'd spent most of his life being left. Now someone was staying. Sometimes the law doesn't know the difference between being claimed and being loved. The courtroom was 1 room wide, 2 windows tall. A potbelly stove crackled in the back, and snow piled high outside like a dare. Emory Voss had never stood before a judge. He wore the same wool coat he'd fixed 3 winters running. Didn't wear a tie. Didn't need one. Beside him sat Alma, hands steady on her lap. Behind them 3 small girls, all in hand-stitched dresses. Bess even wore shoes that didn't match. But her hair was braided neat, because Emory had tried. God, he'd tried. The judge was a square-shouldered man with tired eyes. The kind who'd seen the law bend and sometimes break. But even he looked unsure as Lyle Thresher spoke. "Mr. Voss acquired 3 underage girls in an unlawful transaction without proof of identity, guardianship, or suitability." He slid papers across the table like knives. "Your Honor, this is about accountability." Emory stood. His voice cracked once, but not again. "I never asked to be anyone's father. I was told I couldn't be. But when I saw those girls bruised and shaking, I didn't see a bargain. I saw a second chance. I don't have pedigree, but I have a stove that stays lit, land with food in it, and a roof that don't leak. They call me Papa now, and I don't take that lightly." Alma stepped forward then. "I was there when they were taken. I was there when they were found. If a child's safety isn't about love and steadiness, then what is the law for?" There was a long pause. The judge looked down at the papers, then back at the children. "Bess." "May." "Junie," he said, "do you want to stay with Mr. Voss?" Junie blinked. "He's not Mr. Voss. He's Papa." And that was that. Not a gavel slammed. Not a cheer erupted. Just the sound of a pen scratching custody granted into a page, and Emory's hand gripping the bench like it might float away. Outside, snow was still falling, but the sun had found a way through the clouds. It always did eventually. Sometimes freedom doesn't come from running. It comes from standing still and letting love speak loud enough for everyone to hear. Spring came slow to the mountain, as if it too needed time to believe again. But by April, the creek behind Emory's land began to hum. Little green shoots pushed their way through last year's frost, and in the soft patch near the back fence, Junie's sunflower seeds finally broke the surface. Emory Voss, once a man of silence and bare rooms, now stepped over skipping ropes and drying dresses just to reach the porch. He still rose early, still fed the chickens first, still split wood, but there was laughter now, laughter under his roof, and somewhere in the daily doing, his home had become a haven. Alma had never said if she planned to stay, but one morning she started weaving a rug by the fireplace and didn't mention leaving again. At night, she told stories the girls leaned into, and Emory, he listened to, like someone being told he still had time. One evening, Junie brought him a sketch, 4 figures holding hands under a cottonwood tree. Above them, the word family. He didn't say anything, just kissed the top of her head and left the paper on the windowsill where the sun could find it every morning. A week later, Alma asked softly from the porch, "Do you ever regret it?" Taking them in, Emory didn't look up from his carving, only that I didn't find them sooner. The mountain didn't change much. It still snowed hard. Wolves still howled far off at night. But in a patch of land once ruled by silence, something warm had taken root and stayed. Sometimes the best things in life don't arrive on time. They arrive when you've nearly stopped waiting, and that's what makes them holy. Would you like to read another story like this one, or hear what happened next on that mountain ridge? Let us know in the comments. Sometimes family isn't made by blood. It's made by moments, by hands reaching for each other in the dark and choosing again and again not to let go. Emory Voss didn't set out to become anyone's father, but by opening his cabin and more importantly his heart, he helped three little girls believe they were worth staying for. And Alma too, a woman told for years she was too much too late or too worn to be wanted, proved that it's never too late to become someone's safe place. Out here in the West, where winters are long and silence is stretched deep, what matters isn't how fast you ride, but how gently you carry what you're given. Maybe you know someone who needed to hear this today. Maybe you needed to hear it. If this story reminded you that second chances are real, that love can come quiet and late and still be true, consider subscribing to None, Wild West Saga. It helps us keep telling stories that honor softness, survival, and love that takes its time. And if you'd like to hear what became of the Voss family or Alma's next chapter, leave us a comment below. We'd love to keep walking this dusty road with you, because out here we don't bury pain in silence. We tell stories, so no one feels alone in their hoping.